WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and Baltimore Positive. We're trying to keep calm and stay local, and all we've done here the last couple of weeks talk to local business owners and folks involved in government, folks involved in employing people and keeping people employed, and trying to tell some positive stories of hope and aspiration that at some point we're all get to be able to get together and have a glass of wine and share a meal together, or go to a concert or a ball game together. Aaron Tomarchio and I have gotten to know each other because he's taken over that little plot of land that my dad went to work for many, many years over in the Bethlehem Steel area and Sparrows Point area. He is the Senior VP of Corporate Affairs at TradePoint Atlantic. We've talked Baltimore Positive, and I know Don Moeller is so proud of all the things that he and Kevin Kamenetz came together to do over in the east side of town. You employ a lot of people. We have a lot of people that are losing employment. We're talking upwards of 30% by the end of the month. The federal government, your background in government, I thought, you know what? We need to have Aaron Tomarchio on. So welcome in. I know it's been difficult for everybody, but it looks like you're getting some work done from the rooftop over in Canton lately, Aaron.
Hey, Nestor, thank you so much for that introduction. And yes, I'm actually like a lot of Americans and Marylanders and Baltimoreans. I'm working from home right now in Upper Fells Point. I have actually a beautiful view of Baltimore skyline. So Baltimore's looking mighty fine right now as I look out my window. But Sparrows Point is definitely on my mind, and it kind of everything that we're doing over there, both our tenants are doing as part of the supply chain, and then what we're doing on the redevelopment aspect of it, and keeping the construction and commitments going that we have to our tenants.
Well, keeping people working is it's such a tightrope right now, one way or another, from a safety perspective, even if you work in the woods, right, that we're seeing everything stop. And I mean, your background in state government and county government, local government, paint this in a broader light, having done this for much of your career, to know what these officials are going through. And I've talked to Don about it, and you've done it at various levels, but what's going on from Larry Hogan every morning to Donald Trump every night, and every hospital and every mask and every patient and every convention center we're seeing being turned into literally hospital triage. It's an amazing public works project we're seeing trying to be thrown together to keep Americans safe.
Yes, I do have an interesting perspective on that. I will say, in these times of emergencies and crisis, this is when I think government really shows itself really well, and where officials come together across whether you're a municipal leader, state leader, in Congress, and you're trying to problem solve with the issue at hand, whether it's a storm response, which I was a part of on Isabel, or the major snow disasters and emergencies that hit when I was in Harford County. But this is a unique animal that we're dealing with. However, it's still the same concept. It's bringing together the business and the leaders of the government to help kind of problem solve. And I can tell you, from the county to the state, you've got key leaders running all across the state government and local government coming together to problem solve. And most people think of government as this rigid bureaucracy that that you have to navigate, but in terms of crisis management, that kind of strips away. Everybody has a primary responsibility to promote public health and safety, and that becomes the prime directive that everybody follows. And whether you're in public works or whether you're in community services, you are coming together to try to solve a problem, and you have to think creatively and outside the box. So I think you are seeing government, in particular, our state and local government, come together to think outside the box, whether it's, suspending, liquor licensing laws, so to allow, delivery of a product to your doorstep, to, Baltimore County inspectors and permits, working virtually, trying to figure out how they can continue to approve plans and get, keep keep projects moving in Baltimore County, and they're working very hard to kind of, create this new normal that we're having to live in and be able to work through it. But the problem solving, I think, is, a lot of smart people across party lines and across governmental jurisdictions are coming together to try to problem solve for this.
Well, you said no one really wants government involved till they need it, right? And I'm a sports guy, right? So I'd say like a long snapper or a kicker. You don't know their name until the game's on the line at the end. And this is where we sort of call upon doctors and science to tell us safety procedures. And this is why, I have an FCC license, Aaron, right? So like we have the test of the emergency broadcast system just in case something happens. I remember when I was a little boy at Colgate Elementary doing fire drills and having to leave the building and bomb shelter stuff and under the desk and all. And I know we've had, unfortunately, in our modern society, our children are susceptible to, everything that would go wrong in crisis management, that they are briefed on all that. But pandemic, right? Like, pandemic is something clearly the President of the United States and people at the federal level, it certainly didn't look all that prepared. I would think most of the medical people have sort of had some sort of procedure on what happens, but citizens on what a virus is and how it comes to you and how it's not something just for over in the Far East, that when it comes here, it's a pandemic here. I think other than your grandmother telling you something about 1918, or certainly from my father economically telling me about standing in soup lines in 1929, but 30% unemployment, the sickness alone and the doctors, very hard to conceive that we're having doctors now getting ill, that what the second line of defense is going to be. And I know for Larry Hogan in our state, and I know the hospitals here are so important, Hopkins, UMMS, LifeBridge. We can go through all the names to sign out everybody involved in this, but we can't have our doctors get sick. And the next couple of weeks are really going to test people's patience, working from home, business, government, and getting people paid, banks and being able to extend credit. And every part of this is being tested along the way. And I think for all of us who've ever built anything, it's a time to kind of come together and say, we've been through this, we've bootstrapped before. This is the time that we're going to come together. I believe that.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And I'll have to say, in my part of my other job that I work with, I've actually had a viewpoint of other states and local jurisdictions and how they're handling this crisis.
And it is being handled differently everywhere. There's no playbook for this, right?
It is. And it is, especially, I've had a viewpoint in what's going on in the South. And I can tell you, as a Marylander, I am very proud of the way our state and our governor has handled this process and how the local jurisdictions have been able to support what the governor has been trying to do. The governor has led very well. He's been decisive.
And bravely, too, from a business perspective, right? Like that day that he has to get up and say, I'm shutting your business down for your own good and for everyone's good. I have partners here, that they're out of business, and I have other partners that are in business, and thank God they're in business because they're still going to be able to send me a check next month, right? So the trickle-down effect of this, medical aside, is that the government is going to be involved in this, right? I mean, and that involves all of us.
But I would say, what's been projected here in Maryland and in our region is stability. I'm seeing it across other parts of the other country, and what we've had here is decisive leadership that has just given us the rules of play. I mean, one thing business needs to understand is they want to know the rules of play, and making sure that obviously these changing times, the rules are going to change very rapidly, but having some level of stability to be able
trust,
to operate
right?
your business and trust, right?
Yeah.
So the way the decisions have been made in Maryland and the centralized approach and the pragmatic approach that has been taken, I think has provided that stability that business needs to have in this type of time. And I'm not seeing that necessarily in other jurisdictions. You look at other states in the South where they've decentralized their approach and they've kind of let the local governments come up with different ordinances here and there, and ordinances are inconsistent with the general state guidelines, and businesses trying to figure out, are they open, are they closed, and, what if you have a business across another county jurisdictional line? And gets very confusing very quickly. And I'm not seeing that here in Maryland. And not only did we kind of set the tone the way the governor has come out, but we immediately put small business programs in place to help, that $10,000 grant that came through, the Department of Commerce for some of these small businesses. That was done almost immediately as these closures were happening. Maryland has these resources right at the gate to be able to help, and that's rare. You do not see that. I have not seen that in other parts of our country as much.
Aaron Tomarchio is our guest. He's over at TradePoint Atlantic, and those of you on the east side of town, maybe you have a friend, a relative, a loved one that's employed over there, something that literally governmental involvement, right, and coming together to say we're going to take something that is currently nothing and make something there that wasn't there before that employs people. Give me a little bit of a briefing on the last 3 weeks of life at TradePoint Atlantic for so many of your partners and things going on over there, because, everyone is in a project. We got the Port Covington folks. We got people building things. I see this big building coming up over in Little Italy, and I see cranes in the sky everywhere in Washington, D.C., right? Let alone what New York would look like on any given day as things are going north, that when everything shuts down the way it is right now, there's nothing normal or natural. We talk about the pandemic playbook, Aaron. There's no playbook for any business owner in any way to be experiencing what they're experiencing right now.
No, there isn't. But, one thing we've done is just take everything a step at a time. Obviously, like most businesses, we've started with, the practicing the CDC guidelines on the social distancing and the sanitization of our work areas. Making sure our operational areas at our port and our rail and our construction sites are all operating with those protocols in mind. TradePoint Atlantic is a logistics and supply chain platform. So, one thing that's coming very clear out of this, pandemic is how important the supply chain is to keeping, some of the, our basic needs met. A lot of our tenants there now, like Amazon or FedEx, Home Depot, they're there on the front lines, working their distribution platform to make sure that they get their needed product to us. So that's an important piece that our tenants are playing in this process. And our construction projects, we're moving forward as much as we can to keep our construction projects on time because, again, we play a part in that supply chain. So these companies that are leasing space and building multi-million-dollar facilities on our property need these facilities up and running because their supply chains are depending on it.
And they'll never get this time back, right? Us. I guess that's the hard part for everyone is we're losing this time and the opportunity cost to every business and every person and every employee and how it trickles down over the next 6 months. Again, we circle back, Aaron. This is where the government sending those checks is going to be helpful to keeping people safe, right? Literally safe.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it is. And I think that's where, a lot of the businesses that we're working with, whether they're small businesses that are suppliers to some of our projects. An example, actually, of one of the things we've seen is Gotham Greens. That's the 90,000 square foot greenhouse that was constructed at Sparrows Point and became operational a couple of months ago. They grow organic leafy greens for, local restaurants and places like Whole Foods. They actually need more people.
Wow.
They called over and said, hey, we have a shortage of labor. We actually need to hire more people because we have an increased demand for our product. So that's an example of kind of, where there was a hiring need as opposed to necessarily a layoff.
Well, Aaron, I'm planning on eating lettuce, even though I can't get it at the farmer's market like I usually do. Like, I'm going to need to eat some lettuce in May and June and July, and someone's going to need to grow that and get that. Literally, we're all going to need to eat stuff, and the sustainability of how long this pandemic goes on. There are models out there, but they're only that, right? There is no, we've done this before. We're about to do things as a society here that we've never done before, right? And using technology and being able to get food to people in a way that in 1918 it was different.
Right, absolutely. The supply chain is different. It's modern. It's more connected. It's more directly connected to the consumer, and that's generally what we're finding out. So you may not be able to go to the store, but you can order something online and have it come to your doorstep. Or right now, restaurants are learning to change up their business plan and being able to maybe turn servers into delivery drivers who are delivering your meal to your doorstep. And that's so you see innovation. So times like this, I think, is when human ingenuity and innovation tend to kind of thrive when we look at how do we function differently and how and I bet you even after this, some of the practices that we've adopted may actually carry forward as we continue to do business.
I had a really wise friend, so I'll give full credit to my friend Scott Rassler back in 2008 and 9 and 10 when the economy just went into the toilet. I remember being with him at one point. He's like, well, we figured it out the first time. We're just going to have to figure it out again, And I think that is all part of the evolution of all of this, is that for every business, everyone's had to figure it out differently over the course of time. That's part of survival. Now, can you figure it out in 30 days or 60 days or 90 days? It's a different kind of challenge. Aaron Tomarchio joining us here. And for everything at TradePoint, tell everyone what TradePoint is, just top to bottom, in case they're tuning in saying, I haven't driven by there lately, past Costas, I haven't kept going. And we had the folks from Costas on, and I know you drive by there on the way to work, or at least used to, and a crab cake or a dozen crabs. We're trying to take care of all of our sponsors, but for folks that haven't been down there, what should someone in Towson that hasn't been down there know about what TradePoint Atlantic means to Baltimore?
Well, TradePoint Atlantic is, the redevelopment of the former Bethlehem Steel Mill, 3,300 acres of industrial zone land in southeastern Baltimore County with incredible access to deepwater port, highway, and rail connectivity. So, the same assets and infrastructure that was in place to support, steel, the raw materials coming in, the steel making, and then the steel product going out to customers is being transformed to a 21st century logistics hub, using those assets to get product to the customers and to the marketplace, and be able to provide a very flexible space to have product manufactured, repackaged and stored and or delivered from. So it's a multimodal global logistics hub right here in Baltimore. So I think what it does is also highlights the importance Baltimore continues to play in the nation's supply chain. We have one of the oldest ports in the country which helped grow our region and our state. And this is just a different evolution of that, and how the port continues to, and port operations and logistics continue to supply our nation's building projects. Our grocery shelves are stocked through that process, and people get their product delivered to their doorstep from companies that are there. So this is the reinvention of Sparrows Point is really what's going on at TradePoint Atlantic, and the cleaning up of over a century of steelmaking, the leftover, environmental history that was left over from the steel mill, and the commitment to clean that up. So at the end of the day, you're going to have a cleaner, greener Sparrows Point that will once again employ thousands of Baltimore area residents.
Well, I guess everything that was attractive 150 years ago is still attractive in maybe a different way. And doing the Baltimore positive thing, I think we have an image issue here in a lot of ways with The Wire and all the other, Freddie Gray and everything that's going on here. But there is an attractiveness to Baltimore from a location standpoint and a historical standpoint. And I know when you sit out on your rooftop in Canton and see that it's very European looking, very old school, and waterways and all the location and all of these things that make it so attractive that business still does want to do business here, right? And I think sometimes we lose sight of how attractive we are when we're dressed up for the prom and ready to go, right?
Oh, we are, and I think that was part of what led to the growth and importance and prominence of Baltimore in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. I think we have an opportunity to kind of reposition ourselves to grow, to further grow. But the fact that Baltimore is in the Mid-Atlantic region and we're a day's drive of a third of the U.S. population, I mean, it's that simple. Geographic connectivity in this day and age is very important. And Baltimore does have it.
Yeah. Hey, let's get back to doing what you're doing. I know you're sort of in overdrive because all of the businesses that TradePoint does business with are in overdrive trying to keep it together as we're all trying to keep it together. So a little virtual fist bump for you, Aaron Tomarchio, Senior Vice President, Corporate Affairs at TradePoint Atlantic. And at some point, we're going to get together and do normal things like meet over Costas for a crab cake or something like that over near TradePoint, and we'll get you back in your office. I hope we stay in touch, and I appreciate the time and the insights, and appreciate your service too in government. I think anybody who has been a doctor, nurse, what my wife has been through, they're all being lauded now and appreciated as they should have been every day, the way we should be appreciating teachers and firefighters. We shouldn't need tragedies and all that, but I think government, and I think bringing people on that have worked in government at any level, and Don, I've been fortunate to meet so many people like you, that this is a time where we step up and say there's some heroes in government too, right?
There absolutely are a lot of heroes in government, and both at the state and local level, and I applaud them for helping get us through this process and providing a level of safety and security and certainty as much as they can. So I know they're absolutely doing that right now. And Nestor, thank you for having us on the show, and look forward to a further conversation.
Hang in there. I appreciate it. Aaron Tomarchio, Senior VP Corporate Affairs at TradePoint Atlantic, one of the big employers over on the east side of town. If you're familiar, you should be familiar. If you're not, you're more familiar now than you were a minute ago, which is what we do here anyway. Nasty at WNST.net finds me. The buyatoyota.com audio vault is there. Still selling cars. All my automotive friends that keep us going here. We're appreciative to all of you. We're going to be featuring all of them as well. Bill Bolander was on last week. Dennis Colatzos will be here on Thursday doing the Dennis Colatzos show. So we're still percolating. We're still doing things, and the NFL looks like they're still going to draft, so we have a little bit of sports, but a lot of Baltimore business, and certainly trying to hang in together. We're keeping calm, we're staying local, and we're staying Baltimore positive. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and Towson, Baltimore.